You have a suit of armor that costs more than a house. You ride a war horse with the value of a modern supercar. You wield a sword forged by a master craftsman. Your enemy, he has a sharpened farming tool. Who wins? The answer seems obvious, but history is filled with surprising, brutal truths. This is the story of how the common man, using cheap, simple, and low-tech solutions, systematically dismantled the most expensive and advanced weapon of the age, the armored knight. Part 1. The high-cost problem. Before we witness the revenge, we must understand the target. The late medieval knight was a product of a technological and economic arms race. His full suit of plate armor was a marvel of engineering custom-fitted to his body, designed to deflect swords and stop arrows. The cost was astronomical. His warhorse was a specially bred and trained beast of immense power and value. His entire ensemble, from his helmet to his spurs, represented a fortune that a peasant could not dream of earning in 100 lifetimes. This created a powerful aura of invincibility. The knight was seen as a walking fortress, a one-man army. But this obsession with high-cost, high-tech personal protection created a critical flaw. The knightly class became over-specialized. They were designed to fight other knights in relatively open terrain. They were not designed to fight a clever, desperate peasant in his own backyard. The peasants with no access to high technology were forced to innovate, and their innovations were born from brutal, low-cost pragmatism. Part 2. Low-tech solution. Number 1. The farmer's can opener. The first weapon in the peasant's arsenal was often something he already held in his hands every day. Meet the billhook. In peacetime, this was a common agricultural tool used for pruning trees and cutting back thick brush. It had a curved blade for slicing and a sharp hook for snagging branches. It was cheap, common, and every farmer knew how to use one. In wartime, it became a terrifyingly effective night killer. The billhook was in essence a can opener for men in armor. The long wooden shaft gave the peasant reach, keeping him safe from the knight's sword. The heavy blade could be swung like an axe to batter and dent armor, but its true genius was the hook. A peasant could use the hook to snag the reins of a charging warhorse, to trip the horse, or to hook onto the edge of a knight's armor plate and pull him from the saddle. Once the knight was on the ground, his mobility gone, the billhook's hook could be used to pry into the vulnerable joints of his armor at the neck or armpits. It was a simple, repurposed farm tool that perfectly exploited the weaknesses of a multi-thousand-dollar suit of armor. Part 3. Low-tech solution. Number 2. The impassable forest. We have spoken of the pike wall before, but it is the ultimate example of a low-tech, high-impact system. The pike itself is one of the simplest weapons imaginable, a very long wooden pole with a small metal point. The cost was minimal. Its power came not from the weapon, but from the collective discipline of the men who wielded it. A single pikeman is vulnerable. 1,000 pikemen drilled to move and act as one become an impenetrable forest of death. As we saw with the Swiss, these formations could stop the most ferocious cavalry charges dead in their tracks. This represented a philosophical shift in warfare. The knightly ideal was based on individual prowess and expensive gear. The pike formation was based on collective unity and simple, cheap equipment. It proved that 1,000 determined men with long sticks could be more powerful than 100 wealthy men on horseback. It was a mathematical and tactical solution to the problem of the knight. Part 4. Low-tech solution. Part 3. The earth as a weapon. Perhaps the most brilliant low-tech weapon was one that cost nothing at all, the ground itself. Peasants and common soldiers possessed an intimate knowledge of their local terrain that the often foreign or distant knightly class lacked. They knew the location of every marsh, every dense forest, and every muddy field, and they used this knowledge to devastating effect. The Battle of the Golden Spurs in 1302 is a prime example. A force of Flemish citizen infantry chose their ground carefully. They positioned themselves behind a series of rivers and marshy streams. The arrogant French knights, eager for a glorious charge, rode straight into the wetlands. Their horses became hopelessly bogged down in the mud, and the knights, weighed down by their armor, were systematically slaughtered by the Flemish foot soldiers. We see this again at Agincourt. The English longbowmen were deadly, but a huge part of their victory was Henry VIII's brilliant decision to position them on a narrow, muddy field soaked by rain. The French knights had to charge through a sea of thick, sticky mud. They were exhausted and disorganized before they even reached the English lines. The mud was as effective a weapon as any arrow. The peasants understood that you don't have to break the knight's armor if you can make the earth itself fight for you. These physical tools and tactics were devastating. But the most powerful low-tech weapon was entirely invisible. It was an idea, a philosophy of warfare that chivalry with its rigid codes of honor simply could not comprehend. This was the peasant's ultimate revenge. Part 5. The Guerrilla's Ghost. The chivalric code demanded a certain kind of war. It was a war of pitched battles, of glorious charges of noble prisoners taken for ransom. It was in its own way a sport with rules. The peasant's ultimate revenge was to simply refuse to play the game. This is the birth of what we would now call guerrilla warfare. While knights sought a single decisive battle, common soldiers learned that it was far more effective to never give them one. They engaged in a war of 1,000 cuts. Instead of meeting a knightly army on an open field, they would conduct small-scale raids attacking supply wagons and foraging parties. They would set ambushes in dense forests or on narrow mountain passes where cavalry was useless. They would attack at night. They would strike and then melt back into the landscape they knew so well. This type of warfare was considered completely dishonorable by the knights. It was cowardly. It was unchivalrous. But it was brutally effective. The Scottish Wars of Independence under Robert the Bruce and the Welsh rebellions are famous examples of this asymmetric warfare. The knight was a lion, powerful and majestic in an open field. But the guerrilla was a swarm of hornets, constantly stinging, harassing, and draining the lion's strength until it collapsed from 1,000 tiny wounds. The knight in his expensive armor was prepared for a duel. He was not prepared for an infestation. So how did low-tech beat high-cost? It did so with a combination of ingenuity, discipline, and a ruthless pragmatism born from necessity. The peasant and the common soldier couldn't afford a war horse, so they used a hooked farming tool to pull the knight from his. They couldn't afford plate armor, so they created a wall of simple spears to neutralize it. They couldn't win a glorious charge, so they used the mud and the trees to make that charge impossible. And most importantly, when the knight demanded an honorable face-to-face battle, they refused, choosing instead to fight a smarter, more brutal war of attrition. The knightly class, in their obsessive arms race for personal high-tech perfection, forgot the most fundamental truths of warfare. They were defeated not by a better suit of armor, but by simpler, more adaptable, and more ruthless ideas. This timeless story of how simple ingenuity can overcome brute force is a lesson that echoes throughout history. If you were fascinated by this peasant's revenge, show your support by hitting the like button. And to continue exploring the complex reasons for the end of this era, subscribe to The Knight's Journey and ring the notification bell. Because history proves time and again that the most effective weapon is not always the most expensive one. It's the one that your enemy never sees coming.